Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and today I'll be talking about patch 8.3 for anybody who might have any concerns about getting into the last patch of Battle for Azeroth. We can all agree that Battle for Azeroth had a very shaky start and put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, but is patch 8.3 worth getting into? Short answer is yes. I think it's worth getting into if you want to enjoy World of Warcraft. It looks like Blizzard is taking steps in the right direction to fix World of Warcraft, and it seems that they're trying to course correct primarily for the announcement of Shadowlands. I don't think Blizzard is going to do anything crazy new for Shadowlands in terms of some of the systems, but they are trying to fix the current systems to make them easier to play with, and maybe we'll see some of these mechanics come back in the new expansion. Now, it's going to be a little bit of time before Shadowlands arrives. We currently do not have a set date when Shadowlands might come out, but for patch 8.3, my guess would be about the Tuesday right after the holiday. So the 7th of January is going to be most likely when patch 8.3 is going to be released. Now, once 8.3 releases, there's going to be a plethora of things to do. And Blizzard had about what feels like 2 months or so to really define and refine every bit of content. Like, they didn't want to release patch 8.3 before the holidays, which means that a lot of us have to do patch 8.5 for just a little bit longer. But then again, nobody wants to start grinding AP while you have the holidays where you can go and hang out with your family. However, after patch 8.3 arrives, there are a couple things that are going to get kickstarted, but Blizzard is already making changes to make things easier. First of all, let's talk about the content itself. You won't get any new islands, you won't get any new zones. Instead, you're getting a revamp to 2 zones with a continuation for the storyline, where we will be tackling N'Zoth himself. So the storyline and what Blizzard is doing visually when it comes to N'Zoth has been pretty impressive. It has been very enjoyable to play through, even if I'm playing on a PTR character and I know I'll have to do all this stuff all over again. It's still fun to go about it the first time around. One of the first pieces of content you will encounter will be the invasions of N'Zoth. And right now I feel like it's definitely a missed opportunity because those invasions don't offer any kind of XP catch-ups. Blizzard already has a couple systems right now for catch-up in XP. Mostly being the faction invasions in Zuldazar and Kul Tiras. But it would be great if maybe on an old character at the beginning of your day before you start leveling to max level, let's say you got a Volpera or a Mechanon that you're trying to grind out, so you can play with all your heritage armor and all the benefits, and Vision of N'Zoth or the Invasion of N'Zoth would be a perfect place, I think, to start. Get done with it and then get some sort of a reward for it, which will be maybe an XP increase or maybe a whole load of XP at the very start of the day. Something like this might come in the future, but right now the invasions will be content for your main characters to get resources and gear for any of your characters that you don't really play as much but want to get some catch-up gear just so you can finally get into some dungeons, maybe even raids. As you do these invasions, you will also gain reputations with 2 new factions that will be necessary for you to upgrade your necklace in terms of adding extra essences for your character to play with. But the invasions are going to be the basis of what everything comes from. It is something that can be done solo, and I can imagine some great world PvP content, especially with so many people funneled into one area. I think some PvP shenanigans could be opportune. From there on, you go to other pieces of content, but those other pieces of content will be powered with these invasions. So at the beginning of your day, you will go do your invasions and then find something else to do when it comes to the rest of your gameplay. From there on, Blizzard decided first of all to put a cap on the necklace grind. The neck levels for Heart of Azeroth are, as I stated in previous videos, are going to be limited. The maximum level of your neck is level 80. That means you got to reach 10 extra levels if you're capped for the patch 8.5, which is 70. But afterwards, no more neck grinding. And that means that Blizzard potentially could increase the amount of AP you get every single week and extend it for a long amount of time just to make sure that everybody gets their neck capped out. And from there on, Blizzard is not going to be doing anything when it comes to your neck in terms of the value that it offers for future gear progression. Instead, they're offsetting it to other items other side of your neck, which I think is a good step in the right direction. In a sense, it reminds me of the artifact weapon system. Another bit of gear that you will be stuck with until the end of the expansion will be your new legendary cloak. With Wrathion comes yet another legendary cloak for us to wear. It does come with a pretty cool story quest line, and I enjoyed playing through it the first time around, although all the cutscenes and all the extra awesome in-game moments that are supposed to happen just simply did not play out the same, so I cannot wait to see the final product once this comes out to live servers. But you do a fairly good, fairly extensive quest line when it comes to Rathian, and then you earn the cloak, and from there on it'll be one of the pieces of gear you will be progressing over time, and this will be essentially the piece of content and piece of gear you will continue upgrading almost forever until BFA is done with. The cloak will be the piece of loot that will be evolving as the expansion goes on. And let's say you're someone who is in a heroic raid or a mythic raid and you guys have a hard time killing the final boss. Instead of grinding more AP forever and ever and ever to upgrade your necklace in order to give you all these stats and grinding a billion islands, Blizzard decided to go with the cloak, where the cloak will be upgraded by either killing N'Zoth on a normal or heroic or mythic, or complete a horrific vision, which will be something you guys will be able to do as a solo player as a piece of challenging content, which is perfect. This finally gives players an activity to do in order to continue finding ways to upgrade and make their characters stronger. But compared to the Heart of Azeroth system, which is all about grinding AP, it would really come down to having to do the activity that gives you the most amount of Azeroth power per minute, and that would of course end up being islands. So players would feel like they have to be stuck in islands. A lot of players already professed their dislike for the island system. It's a fun, cool activity, but for it to be the best way for you to gain AP is too much. What a lot of people would prefer instead is to do PvP, dungeons, or raids in order to gain the most amount of AP. Maybe even world quests be a decent alternative. But instead of doing all that and figuring out the numbers, Blizzard decided to offset it to the cloak and make it to a weekly, kind of like a cap. So this already defines the ways that you will be progressing our character in long term, which is a little bit more manageable for your average player than having to grind an extensive amount of AP. This goes hand in hand with some of the different activities that you can do. Of course, Blizzard is going to have a massive raid with a billion bosses, Neolotha, which looks absolutely amazing. Lots of the fights are looking fresh, and some of the dragon fights, where you will be finding some dragons in the raid, from what I've tested on PTR, look absolutely fun, and they really do give you that original nostalgic dragon with a bit of a modern spin to it. Very well done fights, very well executed, and it seems to allow a variety of various players in there. If you're someone who's wondering which class is going to be the best for the raid, I think right now your best geared character is going to be the best choice for you to play. Of course, there's going to be certain specs that are going to be stronger than others, but right now it seems that anybody who is the most geared for it is going to have the most advantage in it. As right now, none of the specs by themselves in the gameplay loop that they offer hold any particular advantage. If you're a fan of Mythic Pluses, the new seasonal affix I've heard and seen has been very well received. The seasonal affix is going to be much easier than this current affix of beguiling. It's going to be a lot easier to play around and won't require nearly as many rogues, as it allows you to fight a mini-boss, up to 4 of them in a dungeon, that come from these pylons that you'll need to interact with, and then you'll be transferred into a different world. And while you're in the different world, you can technically drag the boss around anywhere you want to, using that as a way to skip certain trash packs like you would with a rogue and shroud. Upon killing one of the 4 different mini bosses with various different mechanics to interact with, they will open up a portal that will allow you to exit out of this shrouded world, which allows for players to chain a couple different portals together from various mini bosses in order to find ways, more interesting ways, to skip certain trash packs that you otherwise normally don't want to do. This allows a very creative approach in terms of how people are going to be tackling these same dungeons they've been playing it for the whole time, and how they'll find different ways to get around them. With those same dungeons also comes a brand new dungeon some of you guys might have been able to play or not, with Mechagon. Mechagon dungeon is going to be separated into 2 wings, and Blizzard has been trying to balance them out on PTR as best as possible in order to make it a decent experience for everybody to get into. Also, the Mythic Plus dungeons are going to be a little bit more rewarded. With gear changing in patch 8.3, Blizzard decided to allow players to be able to scale their dungeons and rewards all the way to level 15. Right now, level 15 is going to be the level that a lot of people want to go for when it comes to Radar.io score, which is a score that exists somewhere on the internet that some people care about and some people don't. They decided to make these dungeons a little bit more rewarding. With changes to RNG for gear, they allowed players to, at level 15, gain higher item levels for the end loot. And after completing a 15 level dungeon at the end of the week, and a Tuesday or Wednesday reset depending if you are NA or EU, it will allow you stronger loot. If gear doesn't really incite you, there will also be an achievement for getting every dungeon done at a level 15 or above, which will reward you with a mount. So think of it like ahead of the curve for the raiding scene, but instead do that for Mythic Plus dungeons, which I think is a right step in a right direction. Maybe adding a seasonal mount for your Mythic Pluses might be a good way to convince more people to join in than a random score on the internet that determines whether you're good at the game or not. For PvP, not a lot can be said. The PvP season is going to be season 4. It might have a couple of different rewards and few new trinkets for us to play with, but for the most part it's going to stick to the good old BFA system that we've enjoyed so far, just with a different number for the season. Outside of all this, you also have a single player scenario, which is going to be quite challenging if you're someone who doesn't enjoy group content but still wants to get some kind of challenge out of the game, which is going to be Horrific Visions. Horrific Visions are going to be scenarios that represent Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and you will be able to get through these Horrific Visions and choose how hard you want it to be. You can progress pretty far into these Horrific Visions to challenge yourself, or do the bare minimum for the least amount of rewards, which will allow quite an interesting gameplay loop. This type of content actually can be done with a group of players, so if you have a couple friends, maybe 1 or 2 or even 3, you in any party of 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 can dive into these Horrific Visions. Pretty sure certain metas and comps might be able to be formed through these Horrific Visions, but I think this is a system that Blizzard wants to play around with and take further into Shadowlands as we go on. This will be something great for anybody who has enjoyment in single player content. I know World of Warcraft is an MMO, but if you played through Legion and you remember what the Mage Tower Challenge skins were like, and the Mage Tower Challenge themselves was for different specs, then this will be very, very similar to it. Not exactly the same, but still pretty good, and I'm personally very excited about it. There's still very little about it to discover in terms of what kind of combinations will be good, and how difficult will they be solo. Is there going to be specific rewards for completing the strongest, hardest version by yourself or maybe in the group, and how well are they going to scale? So there's a lot of questions that come with it, but a lot of excitement and anticipation as well. Even in terms of essences and Heart of Azeroth, even though a lot of people don't like the Heart of Azeroth, the essence system is still getting a couple updates. Blizzard realizes that some of the essences that we have right now are strong, but they come from raids that we're probably not going to want to go back to once the new raid of Neoloth is available. So Blizzard has been adding a couple of different new essences for healers, tanks, and DPS that are actually quite viable and quite good. So even if you're coming back into the game and you have not unlocked the Rock Boy essence as a DPS and you really don't want to go back to Eternal Palace just to grind it all out over a couple different weeks, then the Neoloth raid will have exactly the essence you need in order to get you kick started and get you going and doing some great damage. Same thing applies, but you can also change it from damage to healing if you're a healer, or tanking if you're a tank. But Blizzard seems to have got you covered, and they gave you some decent essences to work for. As well as you also have your Mythic Plus essence, you have your BG essence, you have your Arena essence, which all should be viable. So if you're a character and trying to get the best essences for your tune, whether you play Enhancement Shaman, Outlaw Rogue, Destruction Warlock, or whatever spec you may want to play for this patch in particular, you should still have a decent essence or two to work with when it comes to this new patch. You also got a little bit of a catch-up mechanic coming for your characters if you do want to get some alts up and running. Besides Valpera being added and Mechanomes being added, there's also allied races added for Death Knights, so a good opportunity for all of you guys to get some alts going. Sometimes it is difficult to get catch-up gear, and with Benthic gear basically going by the wayside, what are going to be some of the other avenues for you to catch up to your main? The catch-up gear is going to be very similar to how Legion catch-up gear was. It'll give you various types of armor tokens. That means sometimes you might give you a cloth armor token for belt, boots, or anything. Sometimes it'll give you plate, mail, or leather, and if you get lucky with the armor tokens across a bunch of your alts and you're able to farm them up, you might be able to outfit a brand new character with 400 itemable pieces of gear. Now Blizzard might change this in the future, and the way the Benthic has been done I felt like was really well done, because it gave you an armor token that didn't care about different armor types. But maybe they decided to go with a Legion style system, and they'll just shower you with variety of different tokens, so if you do want to get a bunch of alts up and running, this might be the perfect opportunity. but this gives you an idea and availability. If you do have a bunch of alts to play the game, this will allow you to grind out the alt gear for the one alt you want to funnel everything for a lot easier, and will give you more reasons to get on your alts if you want to play the game besides just raiding dungeons and PvP. Also, the biggest thing that can be said about patch 8.3 will be the gear and how it functions. We'll be going for corruption gear instead of Titan Forging and War Forging. Titan Forging and War Forging randomly will give you an item level way higher than what your original piece of gear would have been, which sometimes can be exciting to receive a piece of gear that normally would have been a blue, but now it's purple, big, shiny, massive item level on it, and it comes with a socket. The problem with that is the gameplay loop is going to be very RNG and very repetitive. Players are going to be doing the same bits of content, same dungeons, raids, and more in order to get a slightly competitive edge amongst other players, slightly extra item level on the same piece of gear they already have. Maybe the next time you run that same dungeon you ran 10 billion times, this time it'll give you a socket, which will be an upgrade over your piece of gear right now. Even the idea of adding a socket to an item is going to be limited when it comes to the way you'll be acquiring it for 8.3, and you will actually be able to earn it by purchasing it after doing a variety of different activities in patch 8.3, which I feel by itself is going to be a much better system to work with. And if the gear does get any kind of upgrades, it is going to be in the form of a corruption to go with the whole N'Zoth element of how N'Zoth influences might make someone more powerful, but it also might corrupt them. I've talked about corruption gear in excess for a while on the channel actually, in terms of how good it is and what are its implications, but generally sometimes a piece of gear will give you a little bit extra of a stat. Maybe it might make you take less damage over time or increase your healing. Maybe it might make your crits just a little bit stronger, but it'll give you a debuff. And with too much of those debuffs, will make those debuffs even stronger. So the more corruption you have on your character, the weaker your character may play in some situations. Sometimes you'll have a spawn of N'Zoth attack you out of nowhere, which will make it harder for you to DPS or tank or heal. So managing that corruption number is going to be very important. Sometimes corruption gear is going to be a definitive addition of damage to your character, and sometimes you might want to limit how much corruption you have in order to not die before you're able to kill the final boss. So this will be something to play around with, and while the gear is not a guarantee of an upgrade, it does make the player think. It does make them try to figure out what would be the best combination. And I'm pretty sure everybody is going to be able to sim it on a website at one point or another to find out what's going to give you the most value for the corruption that it gives you. And there's probably going to be a specific number to shoot for. But it still does give the player a little bit of agency and choice of, do I want this piece of gear? Is this an actual upgrade? Is this corruption worth an upgrade? And if there's a piece of gear that is an upgrade for you, but you don't like the corruption element for it, maybe you already have too much corruption or the effect is just not worth it for you, then you can actually cleanse that piece of gear. So if something does get randomly awarded to you with some sort of a damage increase or some sort of a buff, it is not essentially a buff. It really depends on the player and how they might be able to use that buff that it has. However, if you don't like it or don't know how to use it, you could cleanse it and keep that gear regardless. But no artificial item level increases with the loss of War Forging and Titan Forging are going to be coming into the game. That means if you get something that is powerful, you get something that is powerful, and that's it. You won't have to worry about maybe getting that with a socket, maybe getting that same piece of gear with a bit more item level, maybe getting that same piece of gear with slightly different stats. Sometimes it'll get corrupted, sometimes it won't get corrupted. Will you be able to use the corruption, and will it be beneficial for you, or is the corruption playing against what your character is all about? That'll be up to the player to decide on those kind of questions. And it feels like Blizzard is taking time right now to fix the gearing system, and it's not going to be completely fixed and 100% perfect, but they are taking steps towards that direction little by little, as what I think is a setup for how Shadowlands might function in the future. Right? For example, for Blizzard, it might be a good idea to test out these systems right now, to see how effective they are, to try to make them the best systems they can be with what they've got going on, and see if they can take elements of the gearing and progression and the lack of RNG and different types of RNG, like corruption not being a definitive upgrade for your character, stuff like that. How can they take these systems and find a way to continue the progression of your character, to make it more sane, to make it less RNG, to make it less enjoyable, but at the same time find ways to keep it somewhat interesting. And I'm personally actually very excited that they are going through all these systems. This does make me think what Shadowlands might look like, and what pieces of concepts and gearing and what parts of BFA from patch 8.3 Blizzard might want to borrow into Shadowlands. I guess only time will tell, but either way, I'm super excited to see what Shadowlands is going to turn out into, and to see if there's any patch 8.3 influences that are going to be direct into where Shadowlands is going. But so far for me, the patch 8.3 systems we have right now are a step in the right direction. It isn't perfect course correction, but it is something nonetheless. And that's what I'm very, very happy about. If Blizzard is taking these steps right now, and with the plentiful time they've had to implement this and find ways to perfect this for patch 8.3 with how long we've had to wait for 8.3, this potentially should be one of the better patches for BFA, and should be a good patch to set us up for the future that is Shadowlands. Either way, I'm very excited. This was kind of a long video, but I hopefully covered everything you guys are interested about when it comes to 8.3 and everything we're getting for now. This is again still early preview, as we are still about a month away or so before the release of patch 8.3. The 4 weeks I feel like are gonna fly by, maybe very slowly, but they are gonna be gone, and 8.3 is gonna be here very, very soon. And I for one cannot wait. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the system we talked about here in this video. Do you like them? Are you excited about them at all? And if you weren't aware of any of these systems, well, hopefully this video was able to clue you guys in. And if you enjoyed the type of video, if you enjoyed the kind of updates, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.